everyone, it's Tim Holtz, and today I want to share a cool new addition to my Sizzix Village series. This is the Village Manor. And the manor transforms our village dwelling down here into a two-story cool house. This could be a haunted house, a Victorian house. It's just a very majestic manor. Now remember, with the Village series, we do need to start off with the base die, which is the dwelling. This is a Biggs XL, and this is going to cut our structure. So you'll need this in order to construct the manor, because what this die does, this is a Biggs L, this is a steel rule die, but this cuts this second story as well as some of the decorative elements that are going to be used in this. And what I really like about this, just check this out, is the detail of this particular building. It really takes something that is pretty simple, kind of our basic shape, into something just unbelievable. And there's a lot of details on this one. This could be as detailed as you want it to be, kind of as spooky or creepy, or as shabby chic Victorian as you want it to be. But I love all of the details that this one incorporates, and I want to share with you how we construct this top story for our manor. All right, so the die is going to cut out these components. Now remember, if you haven't checked out the original videos that I've done just on the dwelling, be sure to check it out on YouTube. I'll link it below. But it is important that you construct the dwelling first. But these are going to be the elements for the top story of the manor. So let's talk about the dwelling. The dwelling itself, as I've mentioned many times, I like to start with 110-pound index stock whenever I construct the building. And the same thing holds true for the manor because it is a structure. Once I construct this structure, and it has some pretty good stability, then I'll go in and add all of the surface treatments, whether it's corrugate or whether it's cork. In this case, it's going to be some different types of cardstock, because it's much easier to pretty much put your siding on instead of trying to build out of those thicker materials. This 110-pound kind of index or cover stock is really going to be perfect for the foundation of this. But there are some modifications that I've done for this dwelling before I put the manor on. And I'm showing this in the video because these aren't necessary modifications. You don't need it. You'll see that on the packaging, it doesn't even refer to these. But if you plan on lighting this up, which as you saw in the opening has a really cool lighting effect, you do need to do these modifications so the light shows throughout the entire structure. So what I've done is I've built the dwelling, the base. I've cut off the front door. So this is normally attached when you cut this out, but I cut this off because the manor has an entryway, kind of this open area, and I want the light to be able to shine through that entryway. See that add-on? So I need to make sure that I cut off this front door so the light shines through. The other thing, of course, is in the roof. So before I glued the roof down, this was my roof piece, all right? I just went in, kind of marked, this is a 3-inch wide roof. I just went about 1 inch into the center and about 3/4 of an inch in there, and I just marked it with a pen. This is all gonna get covered anyway, so you don't need to measure if you don't want to. But this, by doing kind of that inch in the center and about 3/4 in, I can just open this up and just go with my scissor and just really kind of create a skylight, I suppose. But I'll just chop this out. There we go. That's what I've done here. And then I've gone in and glued the roof and finished it off. This way, when I put light in there, it's going to shine up into this top section. You can see in there exactly what I'm talking about. And it's much easier to do this before you glue the roof down than to try to go in with your scissor or knife and chop it out. So that's really the modification that I've done to our basic structure, right? Because then once we build up on top of it, we have the ability to have light shine throughout the whole thing. All right, so the pieces to construct this manor, there's going to be, of course, our top section, and I'll talk about how we assemble this. Then we have our entryway. Now I've already gone in and kind of scored everything with my bone folder and craft scraper just to smooth out all the folds. Remember, the steel rule dies, depending on the thickness of your cardstock, will already put in those little score lines, but if you go in and use one of those folders to really make your fold strong, it's much easier to construct. So we've got that. Then we have the chimney piece. Now what's interesting about the chimney piece for this, it is designed to work with the existing chimney from the dwelling, right? So we'll use that, but then this smaller one kind of nests inside just to create a whole different effect, almost like a little smokestack. And here I've decided to put 2 on mine. You don't have to put 2 on your manor, but I decided to do 2. So anytime you're going to do more than one, you would obviously need to cut it twice when you're cutting through both of these pieces. Then we have some of the accent pieces. These are going to be the elements for our roof. And this will need to be cut through twice because we will need 2 of each of these pieces to construct our roof. So this will need to go through 2 times in this section. Whenever I run a die through twice, I just cut my index stock just to that area. So you'll see even when we position some of the elements, we try to keep them close so you don't have to run the entire die through and cut out pieces that you don't need. So you'll need this twice. And all of the detailed instructions are on the packaging itself. Then we have this top piece, and although when you cut everything out, it's just going to look like a rectangular scrap, you will need it because this is going to be the top area. Then we have some other detail pieces. We've got this little ring, and this is just going to be the trim for the window because the window is in the top through our mansard, so you're going to want to cut this twice also. We always have some different window frames, and you'll notice that as the village dies, each time I have a different theme, I try to incorporate some sort of different window shape. This one happens to have a very kind of creepy, cool, decorative arch, but the surf shack is kind of jagged. The winter one is a little bit more streamlined. We've got the bungalow that has shutters. So it's definitely a great way to add a little bit of personality to these little village houses by having some different type of window. This one, depending on how many you'll want to cover, of course I wanted to cover all of the windows, you'll need to cut this out 7 times because you've got the 5 here and then you'll have the window here front and back. So you'll want to run that through several times. Now for these, because they're decorative, I just cut them out of white cardstock just for the video to share with you. But remember in my intro video on the dwelling, the structure is the only thing that I cut out of index stock. All of the decorative details, I will cut it out of the actual material I use. And in this case, I went in and cut out with black cardstock. So I don't bother doing index stock and then black cardstock. So I'll just go in and sand this and just run a bunch of these through. So any decorative element, actually cut it from the material itself. But for the ease in the video, I'm just showing the white so you can see the pieces that the die includes. The other is going to be this gate piece. And the gate piece is very cool because it can be adapted many different ways. Remember, this base shape, this is included in the original dwelling. I wanted to add just a little bit of a fence. So I just cut this 4 times and just folded it right there and glued that down. So I've used this gate because I decided that I wanted to fence this in. I cut this 4 times. And the nice thing about these dies, remember, this is all up to you. You are the creator of this. So you can put as much of fencing or not if you don't want to even use it. But the other thing that I use this particular piece for is if you look at the very top of this mansard roof, you'll see those little spikes. Now I used 2 of these for the spikes, and all I did was I went in and cut off this bottom area. So after I cut out the fence pieces. Now for this one, because I wanted something that looked like iron, I did cut this out of foil cardstock. I just like to go in and take a little bit of, it could be metallic cardstock or foil cardstock. That's what I cut through. But I'm just going to cut off the bottom just with the scissors here. And you'll see that these little spikes, there they are. We're just using these center pieces. So I don't need these outer little fence posts. So I'll just go in and get rid of those. And then you can just go in and adhere this. So I've got a piece there, and then I cut just these 2 for the front and for the back. So you can really dress this up however you want. You don't have to follow any of these. The whole purpose of this video is just to give you some ideas of how you can really create some personal touches to this. So let's talk about the structure and how this goes together. When we go and build anything, at least when I like to build these, I prefer to use hot glue for most of the structure. It's just a quick way to kind of bond everything together. And I love this detail glue gun from SureBonder. Again, you can use whatever adhesive works for you, whether it's going to be glossy accents or a gel medium or anything. So we have all of our tabs. These have already been folded because I pre-folded them. I'm just going to go in and just add that bead of glue. I'll take this piece, wrap it around, and match it up just like that. And the tabs will match up just fine. Now, when I'm working with something like this, I'll normally build my structure just like this out of index stock, and then I'll go in and add my siding. So that is how I prefer to do it. So we have this piece, and you'll notice that the front area has that little notch cut out, and the back area is going to be completely straight. And that is because it is designed to fit over that existing dormer in the dwelling. So you'll see when this sits right over the top, see how that just fits in perfect, right? So that's how we've created that particular piece. So if it matters to you at the front or the back, depending on the treatment that you're going to do, you'll just know that that little V area, that's going to be the front, okay? Then we'll talk about this entryway. This entryway is just one particular piece. It doesn't necessarily need to be assembled other than just folded. You can do any of your treatment, whether it's going to be the siding or whether you're going to do anything to the doors. Here I just took some cardstock, took some mini fasteners and just made some vintage wooden planks and glued those on. And those are my doors that are right there. Now this piece just gets glued right over the existing, but it is important that you have already added this front dormer and you've added that porch piece, because you're just going to take glue, you're going to put this on both of these tabs here, and then you'll see that it fits right under there. Let me set this down so I have a little bit of leverage, and it slides right over that porch. And see how that just fits right in there. This doesn't even have any glue, but it is designed just to fit nice and snug in there. So have this already built, giving you ease to kind of put that in. If you don't have this bottom piece assembled and you try to glue this on, it's really wonky because it's got no foundation to sit on. So that's my suggestion for that. So I've already done all my decorative elements, and then I just kind of install that front little entryway. It's kind of nice. I like that feature. The other one, of course, is just our chimney area, and that's really just our little smokestack, just like the original chimney. It just happens to be a lot taller, a lot skinnier. So I'm just following that same thing, just kind of gluing that. You'll notice it's got these little fold-in tabs. Again, just like the original dwelling, you're going to add your glue, and when you add your glue to this, this goes right inside that existing one, sits on your roof, and there's your stack. Pretty cool. Just a little detail. We're always really striving for ways that we can take what you already have and just adapt it, give it a whole little retro fit. So I'd have done that for whatever chimney. And on mine, I just decided some different material. Again, just taking that foil cardstock. Here I added a little texture paste just to kind of make this look like stone. There's my sample there. And just because I wanted some balance, I put 2 in there, but totally up to you. So you can see these details, really, really nice. And I'll try to point out like these corners. A lot of times you'll see how the corners of my building are so defined, because remember, I'm not creating my siding and folding it. Each piece is separate. So when it's separate, it leaves that area kind of exposed, and I'll go in and ink that. And that's what makes all of these areas stand out, which I think it gives it a more authentic look. So that's why all the corners of everything really stand out, because even though I've wrapped this, remember, I've kind of stuck my panel on there, stuck my panel on there, stuck my panel on there. So that's important. All right, now let's get into this guy, because this is the one that I think could create some confusion, because it's very interesting how this was developed. And a huge shout out to EL, who I work with at Sizzix, for really taking her time and patience in designing a roof that's going to have a slope, because that's what's really cool about these mansard roofs, is that it's got that curve to it. And it's very interesting when you're trying to make almost a box out of it, but it's got a curve to it. So it's a little strange. So here's how this works. When you cut these out, and remember we need 2 of each piece, you're going to see that it's got this top tab and almost like these little teeth. And these teeth, you'll see that it does create a score line, and you need to go in with your fingers and follow the score line on the teeth. Don't just sit there and fold it, because we don't want it to go straight across. It needs to have that little bit of a slope. Now, these pieces are going to match up, but when you first put that down, I don't know if the camera's going to pick that up. You see how that almost looks like a straight line, and that has a curve, and you think, wait a minute, this is not going to work. Well, it will, because the idea is, as we're gluing this, watch this straight piece, this piece is going to curve to take on that shape. Do you see that? See how I just pushed in with my finger? And that created that same contour there. So that's what you have to keep in mind when we're gluing this roof. Now, depending on the glue that you like, if you're not comfortable using hot glue, use another glue, because you will need to get your fingers in there to manipulate it. So if you're sensitive to the touch of hot glue, use a different type of adhesive for this. But I'm going to go in and just add some hot glue, because I'm fine with it. I don't add tons of it. See, I'm just putting a few little dots on there. And then I will go in, I'm going to match up my corner at the bottom. And then I'm just going to start pushing, and as I'm pushing into this paper, I'm just following the outline shape of this roof. Simple as that. Look, there we go. It's that easy. It's that easy. But it's weird when you do it and maybe you haven't seen a video or no one explained, because you're like, wait a minute, straight line, curve, these don't match. They do match. So just going to go in again, a couple little dots of that hot glue. And that's really why I like working with hot glue. It's quick. I don't need to hold on. Start at the bottom. Remember, match up that corner and then just pushing with your finger, follow the contour. And on the inside, my finger's inside, I'm pushing those tabs with these other fingers, kind of pushing those little teeth together. So now we've got both of those. Excellent. Okay, we're just gonna kind of keep working our way around, and we'll show you that last one, because the last one, it's not that difficult, but it is a little tricky because we're trying to connect everything together. So same thing, I'm gonna push in on this paper, match up the corner, because you need to create that shape. Really important that you make the shape with the paper. Remember, paper doesn't have a memory. So just kind of giving it that little curve. There we go. Excellent. And now we've got our last finishing piece to put this together. So same thing, just going to go with my glue. A couple little dots of that. And we'll start at the bottom. Get that down. And then just give this roof the shape that it needs. So you'll see once you do your first one, you'll kind of get the feel of that. And another reason why I like to use index stock, because it's going to have more flexibility, more give than if I was trying to do this with really rigid chipboard. All right, so there's my roof, and you can see the top. That's going to be the landing area for the rectangle. So your windows, remember, if you want to glue your windows or anything and you want to do that either while it's flat or while you have the ability to kind of get in here now versus trying to put this in and then trying to get a window way up inside there. So if you're going to use anything for your windows, you can use transparencies or frosted. For this particular one, because I wanted, see where it really looks like glass, it kind of bounces the light back, but it's kind of scratchy. I love to use mica. You can find mica tiles. These are those brown kind of, it's a natural material, but I love just kind of the scratches, but I also like how it reflects light. So you can find mica tiles at most craft stores. These are the ones you kind of peel apart, but they'll cut with scissors. But that's what I've glued inside for all of the windows on the manor. And you can see I love the reflection. It looks just like glass, but it also gives it that kind of creepy, smoky look. All right, so the top of our roof, same thing. Just gonna go in. We're gonna add just a little bit of glue, and we'll set our piece on the top. And I just set that there. And once everything's just like that, I'll flip it over. So I have them using the table, and then I'll just take my finger, just kind of push those tabs down. There we go. And then these rings are just your detail depending on when you want to put these on. Now I put these rings on after I do my roof tiles, which is a whole nother thing that I'll cover in the video as far as the details go. So that's why I always like to have these extra trim pieces. So I'll build this, and then I would go in and add the roof tiles, kind of cut those down, and then I'll put the trim on. All right. So that is how easy it is to do this. So when I want to put these on there are no tabs, there's no nothing, because these really just kind of tuck in there. See how that works? So when I'm going to glue this on, I'll just take some hot glue, put a nice generous bead of glue on the top of that, because no one's going to see it. And of course, because for this one I was building a haunted house, I really didn't care about glue strings, but I got a nice bead of glue, and then I'm just going to, it's like putting a hat on there. And when we do this, you kind of want to set that on there, but turn it all the way around just so you can have a pretty even or level roof. Because if you push down too hard, you'll see this wall will come right up inside that hole. So you don't want to do that. It just needs to sit on there, and then that will give you the ability to just kind of shape it. You can have even a wonky roof if you wanted. Just shape that up like that. There we go. And then there's your mansard roof. And that piece, there's your tab right here. You're just going to put a little bit of glue there. I stuck a little bit of glue inside here in the dwelling, and then that gets sat right over the top. Now, when I build this, I'll talk about this now that you kind of understand the structure of this. Let me get this glue gun out of the way. I'm going to burn myself. So let's talk about kind of comparisons on structure, because there are some things that I learned the hard way, sadly, when I was doing this. And that was when I did my first manor, I went in and just treated this entire dwelling. I put all of my roof shingles on there, all of that. First thing I forgot, of course, was the hole in the roof. I built a beautiful little house and I was going to put on a second story. And then when I lit it up, the top floor was dark. So I was like, okay, back to the drawing board, remember to cut out a hole. Perfect, I had that. Then I completely forgot about these roof tiles. I added all these tiles, which added some bulk to this. Then when I went to kind of put on this second piece, it didn't want to sit the way it sits now. It wasn't nice and clean because it was up here because those tiles were in the way. Does that make sense? So what I found when I did this guy is that I went ahead and I had all of my walls. So I had all the wood grain pieces done, stuck those down. Then I assembled it. Then I went in and literally tiled the roof this way. Not only did it give a better fit, but it really did cut down on the amount of pieces. Because if you think about it, instead of using a big long strip of this to go across, these are tiny little short pieces. So a little bit goes a long way. And the same thing for the top. I just started adding strips up here and I just cut them off as I needed. This way I didn't have to worry about curves, and you can see those cool little tiles. Now, the tiles, there'll be a whole nother video about creating different types of rooftops, but this is using another die in that village series, which are the rooftops. And what the nice thing about the rooftop die is it will cut shake roofs or tile roofs, or in this case, it was a slate roof. And I'll just grab over here. I have a couple extra pieces left over just so you can see what it's like. But I started out just on some Ideology substrate sheet, ran it through my Xyron and put some embossing powder on there. Again, I'll have a video on all sorts of different effects you can create. But you can see these strips. I just started cutting these and kind of stuck them onto the roof. Just cut, next one, next one, next one, next one. So you can really get a lot of mileage if you use it that way. So pretty neat effect. So this is kind of the overall structure of the manor, and hope this video really explained. It's pretty easy to do this. Once you kind of see how that roof goes together, it's super simple to construct this whole piece. But those little tips about cutting the hole in the roof, about cutting off the front door, about putting on that base before you add that little entryway, really makes for a very simple effect to create the manor. So the next part of this video, I want to share a really great technique on how I created this wood siding for this. So for the next part of this video, I wanted to share how to create some really cool wood siding using distressed wood grain cardstock. Now, distressed wood grain cardstock is available in a pack. It's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. The nice thing about this cardstock, it is a textured paper. It has a really detailed wood grain embossed pattern on it, but the back is completely smooth. So very different than what you can get with your embossing folders or texture fades. And that's really what I like. I like to use it for a project like this. I also like to use it for other die cuts, paper punches, the tops of cards. So I really use it as an accent. I don't necessarily construct anything out of it. I just really like it as an accent piece. And I'm going to show you how we're going to alter it into this really cool weathered wood, kind of barnwood siding. Now there's a lot of steps. Obviously, you can construct this manor and you can do anything you want, grit paste or regular cardstock or anything. But I think that if you really wanted to spend some time creating the details, and you'll see it takes quite a while, but it's worth it. I think overall when you're done with this, man, so cool. So here we go. We're starting with supplies, our cardstock. We also need some colors of distressed spray stain, or you can use regular stain or even your ink pads. You'll need some water. You're going to want a distressed ink pad, a dark brown, I'm using walnut stain, a blending tool, and a couple of distressed crayons. Now my colors for this are hickory smoke and black soot, but again, you can experiment with whatever palette you want to create your wood siding. So let's get started working on our craft sheet. Just going to take some colors of stain. Now, even though this is a spray stain, I like to spray it on my craft sheet. The reason is I don't want to saturate the paper too much. Now, I've added more of the weathered wood. That's going to kind of be my gray blue. I've added several sprays of that and just a couple of sprays of pumice stone. And again, you can experiment with colors, but this just gives me that cool barnwood that I want. So we've got our cardstock now. This is the textured side. So I'm just going to take this and drag through that kind of mixture. and I'll swipe in different directions, but you'll see as I'm doing it, it's giving kind of some blue areas, but also some of that dirtier color of pumice stone. And I just swipe it just a couple of times. If I have any space left, I'll embrace the space, I'll be good with it. Then I'm just going to dry it with a heat tool. You'll see as it dries that the stain really kind of beads up into that wood grain texture at first, but when it dries, you'll see that it starts to go away. So I'm going to share some tricks on how we can get that same look while that wood grain cardstock is wet as it is when it's dry. So you'll see that as it starts to dry, my stain gives it that really cool modelly effect. That's why I like using both of those colors. Now I'm just going to go with my distress sprayer, and I'm not necessarily misting it with water, just trying to create some little water droplets over the back. I think this is going to give our background just something a little bit different. I'll blot this off with a towel. You'll see that reactive property. Look at that. Just because when this piece gets cut apart, I want it to look as random and weathered as possible. Okay, so this is pretty much what we have. And I don't dry this part completely. I'll get to about this step and I'll set it aside. If you were just doing one, you could go in and dry it completely. But for this, I already have some pieces dry. So we've got a piece here that is completely dry. So you can let it air dry or heat dry, but it needs to be completely dry for the next step. And you can see as it dries, we've got that great color, but our texture isn't as visible. And that's really where distress crayons come in. I'm just going to start with some gray. Now again, I'm using hickory smoke, but you can use any color you want. And I'm lightly scribbling over the top of it, really light. And then I'll take my fingers and I'm just going to smudge this. Now remember, distress crayons have a drying time. So you need to make sure that you work little sections at a time. Don't try to color the whole sheet of paper and go back and smudge, because it's not going to work. Another thing that's important is you need to be very light-handed. Even if you go over an area and something doesn't show up, don't sit there and scribble over the same area, or you're going to put crayon into the paper, and we don't want that. We want this crayon really sitting on the top of our cardstock. That's what's going to give us, I think, the most authentic looking wood grain. All right, so far that was my first layer with hickory smoke. And you can see already that wood grain detail really showing up, but you can also see where it's not as visible. So we're going to go in with black soot. Now black soot, as I tell all of my students, is black soot. So if you color directly on here with black soot, it's going to be black. So what I'm going to do instead is just color my finger. Distress crayons are very smooth, kind of like a lipstick. And so it's going to go right on your finger really well, and it's going to come right off. Look at that, how you can create just those kind of darker areas of the paper. And I'm really doing this mostly over the knot holes, because I think that that's going to give me, I don't know, just kind of a cooler look. I also like having some areas you can see a little darker than others. Oh, look at that. And that's just using distress crayon on my finger and kind of smudging that on. Simple as that. So here we've taken a piece of paper that started out white, added some color, and then really accented the detail using distress crayon. So that's where we're at. We have that whole kind of crayon texture. So now that we have the crayons, what are we going to do with it? Well, we need to go in and create these little plank strips. So I'm just going to take my tonic trimmer. I love this trimmer simply because I love a guillotine cutter. I think that's really nice. Really sharp blade, but also the fact that it's got these grids, and this grid is 1/4 inch. So all I'm going to do is just take my sheet of paper, put it in there, and you can see it lines up on that first line of the block. And I'm just going to slide this over, and I'm going to stop at every single one of those blocks and cut. So I'm not measuring anything. I'm just looking at the grid and slicing this. And I'll just keep going through the whole sheet until I have a bunch of these strips, paper strips. Now, once I have the paper strips, I want to add a little bit more definition to each of these. So I'm going to take my distress ink and a blending tool. I told you, this is all about the details. So all I need to do though is ink one of the edges, because we're going to layer these. So I don't need to ink all the way around. I'm just going to take that blending tool and just go against one of those edges, and I'm going to lay it down. So all of my edges are going to be to one side. Whether it's your right or your left, it doesn't matter, but this will save you time from thinking you need to ink the entire thing when half of it will be covered up. Now, another thing that I like to do when I go in and ink these pieces is if I find that a piece looks a little too uniform, I'll smash the blending tool down just to create some dark areas. Or back on this piece, if there was an area that didn't get covered in stain initially, now it'll give me the chance to just add some ink if you don't want that white area. So see, all of those things just really doesn't matter when you're doing it. It works pretty quick if you just sit down and say, okay, I'm just going to make a bunch of wood grain slats. You can make them all and save them and do all different colors and just kind of do this a little bit more systematically. All right, so once I have a bunch of these slats cut and inked, I'm going to take and assemble them. And the easiest way I've found to assemble them is by taking a sheet of paper. Now this is not index stock, this is a thinner cardstock. It could be any type of paper. It just doesn't need to be as heavy as index stock, but it could be whatever you want. And I've run it through my Xyron. So I've applied adhesive to this front side of it. So I'm just gonna peel this off. Now you don't have to use Xyron if you don't want to use Xyron. If you want to go in and use a liquid adhesive, that's fine. But this Xyron is nice because once I peel this off, this side is sticky, all sticky. So taking my strips with that ink side, I'll just start on my piece of paper and lay it down. Ink side, I'm just going to slightly overlap. Just slightly, just so I don't see any white, because I don't want to lose too much real estate. And these slats, of course, these could be as wide as you want them to be. But this just goes super quick. And I'm just showing you that when I construct, usually what I'll do, the way I'm really, because I'm pretty methodical when it comes to this, I will actually cut this base piece to whatever size wall it is I'm doing. So for example, if I know that I'm going to cut this particular wall, I'll measure what this is, I'll add maybe 1/4 inch, and I'll cut my base piece of cardstock that big, and I'll apply my slats just to this panel. Because I don't want to apply it to the whole sheet, like over here. I'm only doing it to the width of that wall, because I can save these smaller little slats for other little pieces, right? I don't want to waste everything. So if you just get in the habit of just doing these big sheets and then die cut, you're going to have a lot of waste. So pretty much go in and measure the panels that I need to do first. And that's really how I kind of really think about using these panels up. So I just go in and stick these down to my panel size. Then I'm going to take my panel and die cut it. And when you die cut it, that's what you get. You get, there's our paper on the back, but you get this really cool wood grain panel. It's pretty interesting how all of these, when you see them, even though you lay them out, it's until they take a shape that it becomes something cool. So that's really how simple it is to take wood grain cardstock and make this slatted wall. It takes some time, sure, but it's certainly not difficult. But I think it adds so much character to any of the dwellings, including this manor. So hope you enjoyed this video tutorial, and be sure to check out the other tutorials for all of the other village dwellings, the winter overlay, the bell tower, the surf shack, the bungalow, and so much more. Thanks for watching. Well, I'm back. As I was editing this video, I thought if you were anything like me with this whole inquisitive creative mind, you were going to be super curious as to how I created that kind of lightning effect in my manor during the opening video shot. And I really wanted to create something that kind of looked like lightning, and it's obviously it looks really cool. And what I did, of course, because it's Halloween time, is I went to the dollar store, and they have these they're kind of these lights that I guess you put into a pumpkin. You put in a couple AA batteries, you turn it on, and it's a strobe light. And the little LEDs, of course, I had to do some modifications to this. This is something that is circular, it fits in there, and it has the whole battery pack. So I just disassembled it. I used my Dremel tool and I cut off all that extra plastic that wasn't needed because everything else just kind of fit right through there. And I spray painted it black, and now I have a little lightning effect. Probably a little bit more work than what most of us are wanting to do, but if you really want that cool kind of lightning effect inside your house, that's a simple way to do it.